Hey guys! Tonight we're slipping quietly through the shadowy stone corridors of a medieval castle, not to admire the tapestries or count the goblets, but to uncover something far more personal, raw, and painfully human. You lie curled under scratchy wool blankets, your chamber unheated, a single candle flickering. You hear the heavy breath of your husband, who smells more of stable than chivalry, and outside the walls peasants cry out in the night, plagued with hunger or worse desire. This isn't courtly love. This is survival. And tonight we're pulling back the itchy linen sheets on what sex in the medieval world really looked like. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're listening. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not a princess. You're not even a noblewoman. You're a simple peasant girl somewhere in the mid-13th century, and you've just begun to bleed. Your mother noticed the stains on the straw-stuffed cloths you use each month, and said nothing, only gave you a knowing glance. This means you're ready to be offered, bartered, or married off, ready to become a womb with a name. There is no talk of love, no first crushes or sweet kisses behind haystacks. Romance novels haven't been invented, and your worth is measured in two ways: how much land your father owns, and whether your hips look broad enough to survive childbirth. You're 13, maybe 14. But no one is counting your age anymore. They're counting the seasons since your first blood. You're marketable now. You try to stay near your brothers, hoping to delay the inevitable. But your father is tired. He has debts. He sees your womb as a transaction, and in some small corner of his weary heart, he believes this will be for your own good. He doesn't know what's waiting for you in the bed of a man twice your age. Your wedding is not a celebration. It is an exchange of livestock, a shared meal of turnips and stale bread, and a priest who mumbles the Latin rites so quickly you barely register the part where you're supposed to obey your new husband in all things. He smiles at you with a mouthful of bad teeth reeking of onions and old beer, and that night you don't cry out. Crying would be wasted breath. The act itself is not tender. It's not cruel either. It's simply indifferent, functional. You lie there stiff as he fumbles at your shift and grunts in the dark. He doesn't ask if it hurts. He wouldn't know what to do with your pain if you told him. The bed is small, the sheets unwashed. The air smells of sweat, wood smoke, and the earthy must of chamber pots. If you bleed, and you will, he wipes it with a rag and tosses it aside. There is no conversation. You are not a woman who makes love. You are a body that accepts him. This is your first night as a wife. You already miss the chickens. But let's not assume this story is yours alone. Shift the scene. Let's say you were born into nobility. Maybe your chamber is larger and the sheets are made of linen instead of coarse wool. Maybe you wear a gown with embroidery. But the truth doesn't change, it only wears a prettier mask. You're still married off in a transaction. Your father arranges your union when you are barely out of childhood. You may not have met your husband until the day of the wedding. He's more interested in the lands your dowry brings than your face. You've been schooled in manners, embroidery, maybe a touch of French, but not in pleasure. Pleasure is a word no one has spoken to you. On your wedding night, you're expected to prove your purity. There may be a white sheet. There may be witnesses. Sometimes the consummation is public, not with a crowd in the room, but with trusted servants just outside the bedchamber, waiting to carry the proof. A bloody cloth is displayed as evidence that the bride was a virgin. It is prized, celebrated, as if your pain were a badge of honor. And if there is no blood, if your hymen broke from horseback riding or play long before the wedding, then suspicion brews like spoiled milk. Your worth is questioned, your honor tainted. You can be sent back to your father shamed. Or worse, you might be accused of fornication of deception and face the church's wrath. So you hope you bleed. You pray for pain. Sex in the Middle Ages wasn't romantic, it was duty, a commandment. The church taught that marital sex was allowed, but only for procreation. Anything else, any pleasure, even the wrong position was considered sin. You were there to produce heirs, and once you did, your body became the vessel of lineage. Your name faded beneath the title of mother of. Yet sex was everywhere. Lurking in the margins of illuminated manuscripts, peeking from grotesques on cathedral walls, whispered about in bathhouses and brothels. The contradiction was sharp. The church preached abstinence and purity, while the culture bubbled with barely concealed desire. It was a world of forbidden temptation, of sin and silence. If you were lucky, your husband was kind. But kindness was not required. Consent was a modern notion, and in the eyes of law and church, a husband could not rape his wife. Your body was his right, your silence his entitlement. If you bore children, each birth was a gamble. Many women died before reaching 30, worn out by pregnancies and infections. Your reward for surviving childbirth. Likely another pregnancy. Meanwhile, outside the bounds of marriage, sex still happened between peasants behind barns, between nuns and priests in the silence of convents, between men who dared not speak their love aloud. For them, discovery meant shame, punishment, or death. It's dark now. The candle burns low, and your husband snores with his back to you. You stare at the rafters. The pain between your thighs has dulled into a throb. You think of the girl you once were. You wonder how many children will come. You do not think of love, and still life goes on. In the castle kitchens, a serving girl scrubs dishes with raw, cracked hands. She's 16 and already knows the cook's wandering hands. In the fields, a boy with straw-colored hair watches a stable boy and feels something stir, something dangerous. In the abbey, a nun presses her fingers to her lips, remembering the warmth of another. Sex in all its messy, unclean, secret forms pulses through the medieval world not as pleasure, but as power, duty, fear, and need. It hides in corners. It whispers through generations. And you, whether peasant or lady virgin or mother, live in a time where romance is a luxury and survival is the only seduction that matters. Let's keep going. Let's see what waits behind the next chamber door. You're still lying in that bed hours later, eyes wide open. Your new husband has long since rolled away from you, arm tossed over his own belly, his breath rattling through broken teeth and dry lips. Your thighs stick together with sweat and blood, and your chest feels hollow. It's not just the discomfort or the sting of what happened, it's the finality. You are no longer a girl. By morning, the castle or cottage wakes early. Chickens cluck, servants clatter, bells ring, and the world resumes as if nothing has changed. But you know better. Something inside you is different. And there's no ceremony for that. There's no space for your emotions. No one is interested in how it felt. No one cares if you wept after he fell asleep. You are a wife now. If you're lucky, you get a day of rest before being told to fetch water or mend clothes or visit the priest. You're not sick, you're just married. The church will remind you what your body is for. Priests preach from high pulpits that women are naturally sinful descendants of Eve, whose disobedience brought ruin to mankind. You were created from Adam's rib, secondary, weaker, meant to serve. Your beauty, they say, tempts men into sin. Your desires, if any, are dangerous. So the message is clear: repress everything, say little, do your duty, and bear your children. And if you don't conceive, if months pass and your belly stays flat, whispers begin. First from older women at the well, then from your mother-in-law, then from your husband himself. Maybe they blame you. Maybe they suggest fasting prayers or strange herbal teas. Maybe they bring you to the village healer who asks if you bleed regularly and examines your hips with rough fingers. Infertility isn't a medical issue, it's a threat to lineage. If you're a peasant, it's a problem of survival. No children means no help in the fields, no one to carry on your name. If you're noble, it's a crisis. Heirs must be produced. If you fail, you might be sent away quietly, or worse, accused of witchcraft. Witchcraft. That dangerous, ever-present shadow cast over any woman who steps beyond her role. Midwives, herbalists, women who speak out, women who refuse their husbands. Anyone who resists the silence might one day be labeled a witch. And nothing screams witch louder than a barren womb. You hear stories in the market of women burned, of women drowned, of trials and public shame, of fingers tied to rocks and thrown into lakes to test guilt. Float and you're a witch. Sink and you're innocent, but dead all the same. But let's say you do conceive. There's no elation, only fear. Pregnancy means risk. With every missed month, you count backwards and hold your breath. Morning sickness begins, and your chores become harder. Still, no one gives you much rest. You work until you waddle until your back aches, and the baby kicks at your ribs like a trapped thing. When labor comes, there is no hospital, no anesthetic, no sterile tools, just women. Other mothers may be a midwife if one is nearby. You scream and they hold your hands, wipe your brow, whisper prayers. You bleed, you tear. Sometimes you pass out. Sometimes you die. You might not even get a proper burial. Maternal mortality is common. 1 in 3, 1 in 4. No one counts, really. You're just another stone in the churchyard, marked only as wife of. But you survive. This time, you hold a slippery, wailing thing to your chest, and it stares at you with wet, unknowing eyes. A boy. You feel a flicker of pride. Relief. Your husband will be pleased. If it's a girl, you pretend to smile. And soon, he returns to your bed. Before your stitches have healed. Before you've stopped bleeding entirely. There's no concept of postpartum recovery. Your role hasn't changed. You're still a wife. You still owe him. You learn to harden, to brace, to breathe through it, to endure. You hear other women in the village laugh about their husbands' clumsy fumbling. It's not funny. Not to you. But it's the only way to survive through jokes, through silence, through numbness. Sex is not a shared joy. It is something to be done to you. And outside in the wider world, sex is everywhere but almost always hidden. There are no public conversations about it, no education. You're told not to speak of it, not to ask questions. Everything you know comes from whispers, superstitions, and what you experience firsthand. You think about other women, the ones in the brothels. Brothels are legal in many cities, even church-sanctioned in certain places. The idea is simple: better to let men sin in a controlled space than chase after married women. So towns designate red light districts. Women in these houses are often former peasants, runaways, or orphans. Many are sold into it. Some choose it. But choice is a stretch when your options are starvation or prostitution. These women aren't protected. They are taxed, inspected for disease, beaten if they refuse customers, punished by clergy and scorned by society. But they are also, in some strange way, more knowledgeable than you. They know things about pleasure, about tricks, about the body's strange languages. And sometimes they have more freedom than you. Not safety, not status, but control. They can choose when to say yes, sometimes, not always. Still, no woman escapes the trade-off. Even queens aren't immune. Royal marriages are political tools forged in treaties and sealed in bedsheets. Young princesses are sent off across continents to marry kings they've never met. They arrive with chaperones, translators, dowries, and expectations. Their wedding nights are affairs of state. Some royal brides are as young as 12. Some cry. Some faint. Some get pregnant immediately. Some miscarry. And if they fail to produce sons, they are discarded, traded for more fertile stock, or locked away in convents. Love is rarely part of the equation, and when it appears, when it flickers between two souls, it is almost always crushed by duty. There are exceptions. Lovers who defy expectation, courtly romances whispered in gardens, secret letters, dangerous trysts, even the occasional happy accident of mutual affection. But these are rare. So rare they become the stuff of poetry. In your world, sex is not a story. It is not a choice. It is not even yours. It is given, taken, expected. It is law and sin, shame and necessity. It is woven into every corner of your life, but never spoken of in your own voice. And yet you go on. You wake each morning. You wrap your shawl. You tend the fire. You wipe a baby's mouth. You prepare the bed. You learn to live in the quiet between things, in the moments where he doesn't touch you, in the laughter of your children, in the warm light of the hearth when no one is watching. Because even in a world where sex is survival, survival itself becomes your act of defiance. So stay with me as we walk through the halls of this forgotten reality. There's still more to uncover, more shadows in the corners, more truths behind closed doors. The days blur into each other. Laundry, firewood, aching limbs, and the dull, rhythmic motion of life repeating itself. You hardly speak of what happens in the bed at night. Not to your mother, not to your friends, not even to yourself. There's no safe place for those words. They get caught in your throat like old bread. But you notice things. You notice how the men joke in the fields, filthy metaphors wrapped in laughter. You hear the laughter of drunk men when the ale flows their stories of wenches and good sport. You understand early that your body is not your own. It is seen, measured, spoken about. Never by you, but always by them. Your husband might call you wife or good woman, but he does not know your thoughts. He does not know that sometimes you watch the geese by the stream and wonder what it might be like to fly. He does not know that you flinch when he touches you, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of your exhaustion. He never asks, and so in your world, sex is both public and private. Public in the way men parade it around, make jokes of it, use it to assert themselves. Private in that women never speak of it, except in hushed voices, behind doors, among only the most trusted friends. When you do hear it spoken of honestly, it's always laced with practicality. The older women talk of avoiding more children herbs. You can take teas, you can brew the right moment in your moon cycle to say no. None of it is reliable. Some of it is dangerous. But they share what little knowledge they have because no one else will. The church offers no help. Priests preach abstinence, chastity, the danger of lust. They warn against unnatural acts, anything not aimed at creating life. They even warn against loving your spouse too much, lest your affection turn to sin. And yet the priests themselves are not immune. Everyone knows that many keep mistresses, that children are born in convents hidden away, that monks visit brothels in other towns. The contradiction is bitter. It sours the sermons. But you say nothing. You know your place. And still desire finds ways to breathe in the cracks. You see it in stolen glances between young people at market, in the barely concealed smiles between two women walking arm in arm, in the fierce, quiet loyalty between a knight and his squire. Desire is not a sin, it is simply dangerous. If you're caught expressing it in the wrong way, there are consequences. For women, the punishment is always greater. A man might be chastised. A woman might be ruined. Let's say a girl becomes pregnant outside of marriage. The whole village will know within days. Her belly will grow, and with it the shame. Her options are few. She might try to hide it, bind herself, drink foul concoctions in secret to try and lose the child. But if that fails, and it usually does, she will give birth in silence, perhaps alone, perhaps in the forest. And if the child is found and she is blamed, she could be executed for infanticide. Even if she survives, her life is over in the eyes of her neighbors. No one will marry her. She may be forced into begging or prostitution. Her child marked as bastard will never inherit land or name. Sometimes the father is a noble, a lord, a squire, a priest. It doesn't matter. The blame always falls on her. In this world, reputation is everything. A single accusation can undo your life. And for women, that accusation often takes the form of sexuality. Be too pretty and they call you a temptress. Be too quiet and they call you secretive. Be too bold and they call you wicked. So you learn to walk the line. To keep your head down, your lips sealed, your hips modestly covered. And what of the girls who don't make it? You knew one once. A girl named Annis. Freckled, always humming. One summer she disappeared. The whispers began almost immediately. She was sent away. Some said she'd seduced the Reeves' son. Others said she'd been found with a baby buried behind the woodshed. No one ever said her name aloud again. But you remember her. You remember that she was kind. You remember how she braided your hair. Not everyone's experience is violent. Not every marriage is cold. But the system itself is. It's a machine that chews through girls and spits out mothers, wives, widows. Some find ways to survive it with a smile. Fewer still find genuine love. And if you do find that rarest of things, passion, it must be hidden, carefully, quietly. Even the mere suggestion of infidelity can destroy lives. Adultery is punished harshly, especially for women. Be caught in another man's arms, and you might lose more than your marriage. You might lose your nose, your ears, your life. There are laws, punishments, public shaming. For men, it's different. A husband's infidelity might be winked at, but yours never. So even longing becomes a liability. You sit on a bench outside your home, churning butter eyes, scanning the horizon. A traveling merchant smiles at you as he passes. You feel the warmth rise in your cheeks, but you say nothing. You cannot risk it. You smile back politely and lower your gaze. Your heart still works, though it is wrapped in linen and silence. Sometimes you dream. In those short hours before dawn, when your body is finally too tired to feel, you dream of arms that hold you gently, of lips that ask permission, of a life where your body is your own, where love is not bought or bartered, but given freely. You wake to the cries of your youngest child and the sound of your husband urinating into the chamber pot. The dream evaporates. You wipe your eyes and get on with the day. Because in this world, your pain is not a tragedy, it's a normal Tuesday. Let's not stop now. We're only just beginning to see how deep the silence runs. There's still more to uncover. More lives hidden behind the modest veils and holy walls. Let's keep going. You're kneeling in the chapel, rough stone pressing into your shins, a candle flickering beside you. The priest's voice echoes through the cold air as he speaks of sin, purity, obedience. You understand only fragments. Latin is not your tongue, but the message is clear in his tone, in the downward gaze of the women around you. Your body is a danger, a temptation, a vessel that must be tamed. You fold your hands, eyes lowered. Inside you feel a quiet rage, or is it sadness, Fab? Both. It's difficult to tell, buried under layers of doctrine and dust. The church has shaped the way you think about yourself. It tells you that Eve fell first, and because of her pain entered the world. That a woman's body brings ruin unless controlled. That sex is permitted only within marriage, only for reproduction, and only without pleasure. Anything else is sin. Pleasure itself is suspect. You've heard tales of saints who never touched another soul, who fasted and beat their own bodies to drive out lust. Women saints, two virgins, who locked themselves in towers, refusing marriage, choosing pain over flesh. They are held up as ideals, and you are a wife. You are no virgin. You have no tower. When your priest visits your home, and he does on feast days and during Lent, he asks if you have obeyed your husband. He reminds you that denying him is a sin unless you are fasting or ill. He blesses your children, takes some bread, and leaves. You sometimes wonder what he sees in your eyes. In your small village or manor, there are women who know more than they say. The midwife, the old widow who keeps herbs in jars. They whisper about moon cycles, warm poultices, root teas. They speak of how to ease childbirth, how to stop a pregnancy before it takes root, how to numb pain with mugwort or pennyroyal. It's dangerous knowledge. If caught, they could be punished or worse, branded witches. But they pass it on in silence from one woman to another. It's the only form of control many women will ever have over their own bodies. You once asked the midwife if she knew a way to rest the womb. She looked at you long and hard, then said, "It comes with risk, girl. Risk for you and for her who gives it. And you nodded. You never asked again. And you think about the other lives, those hidden away behind thick convent walls. The nuns. It seems from the outside like a quieter life. Food, shelter, safety. No husband. No childbirth. But inside the story is rarely so simple. Not all nuns chose that life. Many were daughters their families could not afford to marry off. The convent was cheaper than a dowry. Others were sent there as punishment or to secure power for their family. A nobleman might donate land to a convent in exchange for his daughter's veiling. Once behind the walls, she wore the habit and became the bride of Christ. Her voice was lost to the world. Some women found peace in the cloister. Others found madness. Inside the convent, temptation did not vanish, it simply changed shape. There were rules, yes, but there were also secret liaisons, some between nuns, some with priests, and some with men who bribed their way past gates. There are court records, quiet, dusty, buried deep, that tell of babies born in nunneries, of midwives summoned in the dark, of attempts to hide shame beneath cassocks and veils. Desire does not die behind stone. And then, of course, there were the men who wore the robes. Priests, monks, bishops. They too were meant to be celibate. But history is heavy with contradiction. In cities, brothels stood beside monasteries. In parishes, priests kept housekeepers who bore children. Everyone knew. Few spoke. The church itself often turned a blind eye until it could no longer afford the scandal. Then came punishments, sometimes excommunication, sometimes quiet transfers. The shame rarely touched the men as it touched the women, and so women learned to hide. In the cities, in the manors, in the fields, there were always whispers of those who knew too much or spoke too freely. A woman who read Latin, a girl who refused marriage, a midwife whose tinctures worked too well. The line between healer and heretic was razor thin. One wrong word, one accusation, and you could be standing in the town square, hands bound, as flames licked your hem. Witch trials weren't common everywhere, but fear was, and fear worked just as well. Even among women, there was no safety. Sometimes to survive, they turned on each other. Jealousy, suspicion, the desperate need to protect one's own family. They would whisper, "She walks alone too often. She keeps strange herbs. Her cat has odd eyes." It didn't take much. You learned early that being too visible could cost you everything. So you keep your head down. You nod. You smile. You obey. But still there is a part of you that resists. Quietly. Invisibly. You steal time for yourself, moments when no one is watching. You bathe a little longer. You walk a little farther into the woods. You hide a smooth stone under your mattress, not because it means anything, but because it is yours. Your body might not be your own, but your mind some days still is. And what of love, that elusive, flickering thing? You've seen it maybe once. Two servants who look at each other too long. A noblewoman who blushes when the falconer brings her a letter. An old couple in the village who still hold hands. But it's rare. So rare that it doesn't feel real. More like something out of a tale told around the fire, like dragons or fairies. And even if it does come, it rarely lasts. Life is too hard. Survival swallows romance whole. Hunger eats away at affection. War separates lovers. Childbirth turns girls into ghosts. So you settle for something else. A kind word, a shared joke, a moment of stillness beside someone who doesn't take from you. Because in this world, that is enough. Or it has to be. You glance out the window of your small home or your castle chamber. The sky is streaked with cloud and smoke curls from distant chimneys. Somewhere another woman is kneeling beside a bed praying that this time it won't hurt. Somewhere else a girl is hearing the word wife for the first time. And tomorrow it will all begin again. Let's keep walking. There are more layers, still more voices long silenced. We're not finished yet, not even close. Let's step out of the stone walls for a moment and walk the muddy lanes of a bustling medieval town. You hear the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the cries of fishmongers by the quay, and the hum of gossip threading its way through open windows and crooked alleys. Beneath it all, there's a pulse you've come to recognize, the constant unspoken rhythm of sex and survival playing out in every corner of this world. Look closely at the faces around you. The brewer's wife with her flushed cheeks, the apprentice with his lowered gaze, the merchant's daughter who never seems to walk alone. Everyone is part of this undercurrent. Everyone is wrapped in layers of rules, rituals, and risk. Even in a town full of noise, desire is a secret song always playing, never spoken aloud. You pass a tavern, its door ajar. Inside, the air is thick with sweat smoke and the slurred banter of men who've had one too many flagons. A woman in a low-cut bodice leans across the table, laughing too loudly, her smile too practiced. She's not here for drink. She's here for coin. She locks eyes with a traveler, and they disappear up a creaking staircase. She's not a wife, not a mother, not in this moment. She's a woman who's learned to wield her body like a blade, not out of freedom, but necessity. Prostitution is tolerated, even regulated in many medieval towns. It's safer for society, they say, to have sin corralled behind certain doors. Some cities even assign brothel districts, Paris, London, Bruges. There are rules, no soliciting outside designated areas, no working on holy days, no extravagance that might threaten respectable women. But rules are for appearances. In truth, it's a dangerous life. Many of the women who end up here began as daughters like you. One bad harvest, one dead father, one predator in a position of power. With no dowry, no protection, no way to survive. The brothel becomes the last option. And yet these women know things others don't. They know how to read a man's eyes, how to sense danger before it strikes, how to say yes with their mouth while their mind stays elsewhere. They've seen nobility undressed priests without piety, and men weeping in the dark for things they'll never name. Some women find small freedoms here, coin of their own, a locked room, the ability to refuse certain clients. But freedom is relative. Disease stalks the sheets. Violence comes without warning. And once branded a whore, that label never leaves, even if she marries, even if she repents. Respectability is a wall no woman can climb once she's fallen. You might think this world is cold only for the poor, but high birth offers little escape. You know a Lady Eleanor, perhaps, who lives behind high stone walls and tapestried chambers. She wears gowns stitched with silver thread and eats from plates of polished pewter. But her husband is cruel or simply indifferent. She has done her duty, borne 3 children, kept the household, attended mass. Still, she feels hollow, so she writes. She pens letters to a knight stationed in the north, or to a cousin steward, maybe even a foreign courtier she danced with once at a feast. Her letters are careful, poetic, never explicit, but they tremble with longing. If discovered, she could be ruined, her children taken, her body imprisoned in a convent for life. But she writes anyway, not because she hopes for escape, but because it reminds her she is still alive. Desire for women in your world often becomes literature. Men sing songs of love and conquest. They write epics of beauty and grace. But behind those words are real women, unseen, unheard, suffering under the weight of being idealized. Courtly love so praised in poetry is rarely real. It is performance. A knight swears loyalty to his lady, praises her eyes, her hands, her hair. But she remains distant, untouchable, a symbol of virtue more than a flesh and blood person. And still these stories shape expectations. Men begin to believe that love looks like pursuit, like ownership. Women learn that being desired means being silent, beautiful, and endlessly patient. The real intimacy, messy, difficult, tender, awkward, is never written about. But sometimes, in rare corners of the world, women write too. There is a monk in Germany who records the visions of a nun. Her name is Hildegard, and her words are strange, divine, full of fire and sky. She speaks of the body and soul not as enemies, but companions. She speaks of music and light and touch as paths to God. Her writing survives because it is cloaked in holiness. But there are others anonymous women who scratch thoughts into the margins of prayer books, who write poems on scraps of linen, who whisper stories to their daughters before sleep. They speak of longing, of injustice, of brief stolen moments that made the pain worth it. And outside the halls of books and poems, the world continues. In villages, women talk over laundry lines. They share knowledge in the way only women do, wordlessly, with nods, gestures, shared silences. One might say, "He's been rough lately," and another will press a hand to her arm. Nothing else needs to be said. Another might mention a dream, vague and strange. A man with soft hands, a room filled with candlelight. She laughs, brushes it off, but the glow stays in her eyes. Dreams are the only safe place to want. And even there, guilt follows. You have them too. Dreams of choosing, of being touched gently, of a world where your body isn't weighed and judged and used. You wake with the ache of it still in your chest. You bury it. You go about your day. Because there's work to do, always. Milk to churn, bread to bake, children to hush, men to please. Desire has no time slot on your calendar, yet still it lives. Sometimes it rises in unexpected moments, in the feeling of sun on your skin, in the brush of someone's fingers as they pass you a tool, in the sound of laughter through an open window. It reminds you that you are not only duty, not only vessel, you are human. The church might call that dangerous. Society might call it shameful. But it is true. And in a world built to silence you, truth is its own kind of rebellion. Let's keep walking. There's more to reveal in this hushed world where the body is both home and battlefield. The silence is loud, but so are we. You find yourself walking down a dirt path behind the village where the air is cooler and smells of moss and damp earth. The world is quieter here. Just the birds in the hedgerow, the wind through the trees, and somewhere ahead, the sound of someone crying. You know that sound. You've made it yourself. You come upon her slowly, a girl no more than 16, curled beside a stream. Her shoulders are shaking, and her dress is torn. She doesn't see you yet, so you stop unsure. Then she lifts her head, and the bruises on her cheek tell you everything. She won't say what happened. She doesn't have to, and neither do you, because in your world, the line between force and expectation is paper thin. There are no laws to protect her, no court that will hear her case. If she speaks, they will ask what she was wearing, where she was walking, whether she was pure to begin with. And even if she tells the truth, nothing may come of it. The man who hurt her might be a noble, or a priest, or simply a man whose word is worth more than hers. So she'll stay silent, or she'll run, and the world will go on. Sexual violence is not rare in your time. It is common. So common it has no name. It's simply understood as one of the dangers of being a woman. Walk too far from the village. Smile too long at a stranger. Be too beautiful or too alone or too poor. And suddenly it's your fault. If you're unmarried, you risk being cast out unmarriageable, ruined. If you're married, your husband may not care, or worse, he may blame you, say you invited it, accuse you of adultery. In the eyes of the law, you are not a person. You are property. And rape is not a crime against your body. It is a crime against your father, your husband, your master. A crime of damaged goods. But even then, only if you are high-born enough to matter. Some women try to fight. Some go to the manorial courts hoping for justice. A few succeed, but they are exceptions, miracles. Most are ignored or worse, punished for speaking. You know this. Everyone knows this. So you learn to keep quiet, to look down, to stay in groups. You teach your daughters the same. And still it happens. It happens in barns, in alleyways, in noble chambers, in monasteries, and no one talks about it. But even when violence is not involved, even when it's just marriage, there is no real escape from the expectations of your body. If you are young and pretty, men look. If you are old, they look past you. Either way, you are defined by how they see you and how they use you. You may try to reclaim it. Maybe on some rare evening when the children are asleep and your husband is gone to town, you sit with your friend by the hearth. She is your age, perhaps a widow. Her fingers brush yours as she passes a cup. It lingers. You do not speak, but something in the air changes. It is not a man's gaze that stirs this feeling. It is warmth, familiarity, safety. And for a moment, you wonder, what if? What if love could grow between two women quietly, like ivy between stones? What if touch could mean comfort, not demand? What if you could belong to yourself? But even here, even now, there is danger. The church says it is unnatural, a perversion, a crime worthy of punishment. So you don't act. Or if you do, it is once in the dark and never spoken of again. You carry the memory like a hidden ember, and the fire never truly dies. Elsewhere, two men walk through the fields a little too close, their laughter a little too soft. Their shoulders brushing in the wheat. They know the risk, too. If discovered, they could be flogged, imprisoned, even executed. The punishment for sodomy is severe death, sometimes by burning. Especially if the men are caught more than once. Especially if they are priests. And yet, it happens. Desire is not a thing that can be legislated out of existence. It survives despite the stakes. The church speaks often of sin, of lust, of temptation, but rarely of love, and never of consent. That word does not exist yet, at least not in the way you understand it. A wife cannot deny her husband. A servant cannot deny her master. A peasant girl cannot deny a nobleman. The idea that your body is yours, that it requires permission to be touched, is laughable in your world. And still some women try to draw lines. They fake illness. They beg for mercy. They escape into prayer. They sleep facing the wall, holding themselves so tightly that not even their thoughts can wander. Others find small acts of resistance. A hand slipped away. A door quietly locked. A refusal to speak. But none of it guarantees safety. Your body is a battlefield, whether or not you ever go to war. And even when it's not pain, even when it's not violence, there's still the weight of expectation. The belief that you must perform, please produce. That you must lie there quietly and accept what is given. That your worth is measured in sons and your silence. You think about all the women before you. Your mother. Her mother. The ones whose names are lost to time. How many of them carried the same shame, the same silence? How many cried into their pillows? How many begged God for death? How many survived not because they were strong, but because they had no choice? And how many dared to dream? You sit by the fire, your hands in your lap. Outside, the sky is fading into dusk. A rooster calls. The fields lie quiet. And for a moment you feel the weight of all of it. The injustice, the grief, the centuries of buried voices. It is too much to name. Too much to say. So you close your eyes and breathe. And the breath itself is an act of defiance. We're not done. The night is still young and there are deeper truths yet to uncover. Let's keep going. There are more chambers to open, more voices waiting in the dark. You wake before the sun. Your back aches from the hard straw mattress, and your hands are already sore from yesterday's work. The cottage is cold. You pull on your shift, light the fire, and prepare the same meal you make every morning: stale bread, a bit of broth, whatever root vegetables are left. The children stir. Your husband coughs in his sleep. Another day begins, and still last night's weight hasn't left your chest. He came to you again, wordless, heavy, half-drunk. You didn't protest. You never do. You just closed your eyes and left your body behind for a little while. Floated somewhere above the rafters where the soot gathers and the spiders spin. When it was over, he rolled away, already snoring. You lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many more nights like this you'll have to endure. No one ever told you that being a wife meant disappearing slowly. Outside, the village is waking up. The forge is already clanking. The baker's boy carries his tray of loaves. The church bell tolls. Life hums along and you're expected to hum with it. Feed the chickens, sweep the floor, tend the children, smile when spoken to. You do these things, but you carry a secret, invisible burden, the sense that your body is not yours, that it belongs to duty, to expectation, to tradition. And when you pass the other women in the village, you see it in them too, in the way their shoulders curve inward, in the hollow behind their eyes, in the way they say, "I'm fine," through clenched teeth. But no one speaks of it, not directly. Instead, you trade recipes, talk about the weather, whisper about the midwife's new herbs. You never say, "He hurts me." You say, "He's rough sometimes." You never say, "I feel empty." You say, "I've been tired lately." Language itself becomes a veil. You're good at weaving it. And somewhere in town, another girl, maybe a baker's daughter, or a servant at the manor, is being prepared for her wedding. She's young. She smiles a little too brightly. She's been told what to expect, though the words were vague. It's just something women do. It's not so bad. You'll get used to it. No one tells her the truth. No one says it might hurt. It might never stop hurting. He might not be gentle. You might not feel safe. You might learn to endure instead of enjoy. She doesn't know yet what the wedding night will cost her. But you do. And when you see her in the market, cheeks flushed and veil new, you smile and say, "Congratulations." You don't say, "I'm sorry," because no one ever said it to you. Meanwhile, in the manor house, Lady Beatrice leans out her window and watches the field hands work. She's 17 and already has 2 children. Her husband is 10 years older and more interested in hunting than conversation. She spends her days managing the household, avoiding his temper, and praying she won't get pregnant again. She once read a romance poem by candlelight, an old French tale of knights and ladies, secret kisses, stolen glances. She wept afterward. Not because the story was sad, but because it was beautiful. And nothing in her life has ever felt that way. She has a maid, Ellen, who brushes her hair each night. Sometimes their hands touch. Sometimes Beatrice finds herself lingering too long on the softness of Ellen's voice. She doesn't know what it means. Only that it's the one time in the day she feels seen. But she will never act on it. Never say it aloud. Her world is made of rules of lineage of duty, and her body, even in satin and pearls, is still just a vessel. Outside the city walls, in a convent high on a hill, Sister Agnes writes by candlelight. She has taken vows. Her hair is covered her waist, cinched in black wool. She has chosen a life of silence and prayer. Or rather, it was chosen for her. And yet here in the hush of the cloister, she has found a strange kind of freedom. No one touches her. No one demands children. No one pulls her from sleep to fulfill a husband's rights. But even here, desire lingers. She writes to Sister Juliana in the next cell. Small notes passed beneath doors. Simple words. "The garden was lovely today. I thought of your smile. Harmless, maybe, until they're not." One day the abbess finds a letter. There is a private reprimand. Harsh words. A warning. They are separated. One moved to another priory. The other left in solitude. Because even here, even behind stone walls and under vows of poverty and chastity, the heart is still dangerous. Sex may not happen in the open, but it echoes through every chamber of medieval life, silent, present, shadowed. It exists in the things people don't say, in the marriages they're forced into, in the glances they pretend not to notice. You feel it everywhere. At the wash basin when your neighbor avoids your eye. At the feast when the nobleman's hand lingers too long on the serving girl's waist. In the field when the Reeves' son corners a scullery maid behind the hay cart. And in your own home when your husband reaches for you, not with malice, not even with cruelty, but with entitlement. And that somehow feels worse, because you are not a person to him. You are a role, and roles don't have feelings, but you do. And that's the hardest part, feeling everything and being allowed to say nothing. Knowing that your body holds memories, that you never consented to carrying children, you didn't ask for performing acts that never brought you joy. And still you rise each day. You braid your daughter's hair. You wipe your son's nose. You stir the pot. You sing when no one is listening. Because survival isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's the choice to keep going when everything in you says stop. You are not just a vessel, not just a wife, not just a statistic. You are a witness to centuries of women who came before you, to the quiet horrors and quiet loves that shaped them, to the truths that history tried to bury under silk and sermons. And as you stand now in the doorway, apron dusted with flower hair caught in a loose braid, you hold all of that in your chest. Let's keep walking. There's more to see, more stories to tell. We haven't even touched the depths yet. You walk through the village square at dusk, a basket on your hip, the sky bruised with the fading day. You pass the well, the tavern, the shuttered windows, each hiding stories like yours, buried in routine, coated in silence. A group of men sit on a bench drinking. One of them laughs a little too loudly. Another whistles as you pass. You don't look up. You've learned not to. The power men hold over women in your world isn't just physical, it's woven into every thread of daily life. Every glance, every expectation, every law, every sermon. And the moment you step beyond your prescribed role, the world punishes you. It's not always public. Sometimes it's subtle. A lost opportunity. A rumor spread. A cold shoulder from the other wives. A priest who suddenly refuses to hear your confession. The slow social death of being marked as improper. You don't need to be dragged to the stake to burn. Sometimes you burn just by living honestly. You remember a woman from your childhood. Her name was Maud, a widow, tall, sharp-eyed, with a laugh like broken glass. She never remarried, said she didn't need a man, kept bees, knew herbs, delivered babies. Some loved her. Most feared her. Then one day a child fell sick and died. The villagers muttered. Someone said they'd seen Maud near the house that week. Another claimed her bees had flown too close to the church during Mass. It was all it took. She was dragged to the edge of the forest, bound, questioned. No trial, no priest. Just fear and fire. You don't talk about Maud, but you remember. And so you keep your head down. You follow the rules. Not because you believe in them, but because you know what happens to women who don't. But even within the rules, there are traps. Marriage is supposed to protect you. But once inside it, you have no legal rights. Your body is your husband's property. He can beat you. And as long as it doesn't kill you, no one will stop him. He can force himself on you again and again, and the church will call it duty. And if you complain, they'll ask what you did to provoke it. You go to the priest. He listens, nods. He tells you to be patient, to pray more, to submit like the Blessed Virgin, to endure your cross. He never tells your husband to be kind. And if you are a noble woman, the rules are the same, just gilded. Your marriage is a contract. Your duty is to produce heirs. Your body is political. Your value lies in how well you preserve your family's bloodline. If your husband fails to produce sons, the blame may fall on you. You might be sent back to your father's home in disgrace. or forced to watch him take another woman to bed openly, shamelessly, to secure the future. You might be replaced entirely. And if your husband dies and you are young and childless, there's no guarantee you'll inherit anything. Land passes through male hands. A widow may be allowed to stay in her husband's home, but only until a new match is arranged. Your life, again, is a thing to be traded. Even widows with means are vulnerable. A wealthy widow is a target for suitors, for thieves, for the church. Everyone wants a piece of her estate. Everyone wants to control her. And if she refuses, if she chooses to live alone, then the rumors start. Perhaps she's unnatural. Perhaps she uses herbs. Perhaps she caused her husband's death. The whisper becomes suspicion. Suspicion becomes accusation. There is no safety in independence. There is only isolation. You return home and stir the pot over the fire. The children bicker. Your husband complains about the bread. You nod. You listen. You serve. And all the while you think about what it would be like to say no. Just once. To say no and have it heard, respected. To speak your own name as if it matters. To walk through the square and not feel eyes on your back. To sleep at night without flinching at the creak of the bed. You know you'll never have it. But the thought keeps you warm in ways the fire never can. Later that night, you sit by the window while everyone else sleeps. The moonlight spills across the floor. You run your fingers through your hair and remember what it felt like to be a girl not yet claimed, not yet used, not yet reduced to what you could give. And for a moment, you let yourself imagine. What if your body had always been your own? What if you had been taught that desire wasn't a sin, but a voice? That pleasure wasn't shameful, but sacred? That sex wasn't a weapon or a duty, but a conversation? What if you had learned consent before fear? You can't go back. But you can remember, and remembering is a form of rebellion. Somewhere across the village, another woman wakes in the dark. Her baby cries. Her breast aches. Her husband snores beside her. She sits up, sighs, shifts the child to her lap. She is you. You are her. And neither of you speaks your truth aloud. But you both feel it. The ache of being silenced. The quiet rage. The stubborn hope. History won't remember you. Not by name. Not by deed. But you have survived. And survival in this world is no small thing. There's still more. More rooms to walk through, more truths to unearth. Let's keep going. You're not alone in the dark. The wind outside your cottage howls through the cracks in the walls. You've wedged cloth along the bottom of the door to keep the chill out, but it does little. Still, the baby is asleep. Your eldest is curled by the fire. Your husband has gone to the alehouse or to another woman's bed. You don't ask anymore. You sit in the corner and mend a tunic by candlelight, the needle slipping rhythmically through rough wool. The room is quiet. Finally. But your mind is loud. You remember your wedding night. How unprepared you were. How no one warned you, not really. How it felt like the closing of a gate behind you. And now, years later, after bruises, births, exhaustion, and silence, the idea of intimacy feels foreign. Strange. A ghost of something you never truly met. You think about how little anyone talked about the body when you were a girl. No lessons on desire, no conversations about choice, no gentle explanations. You learned through pain, through necessity, through watching your mother flinch and your sisters go quiet, through bruises hidden beneath sleeves and sudden pregnancies that no one explained. And when you asked, God made it so, they said. Or, don't speak of such things. Or worst of all, you'll understand when you're married. But you never did. Not really. Even now, the act feels more like a ritual than a union. Something endured, not shared. Your husband expects it as he expects his supper. Sometimes he's gentle. Other times he isn't. But either way, it's never about you. And that, more than anything, is what you grieve. Not the pain, not the fear, but the absence, the emptiness, the way your body has never been a place of joy. Only labor and obedience and quiet suffering. You think of your daughters. You want more for them. But you don't know what that looks like. The world you know has no space for women who choose, who speak, who say no. Still a part of you whispers maybe something else is possible. In the city, perhaps. You've heard of women who work in bathhouses. Not brothels, though, sometimes the line is thin. Bathhouses where the poor pay a penny to soak in a warm tub, where steam rises and gossip floats like mist, where women touch each other's shoulders without fear, where laughter echoes against tiled walls. Some say those places are sinful. Others say they're sanctuaries. A merchant's wife once told you in hushed tones that she visited a bathhouse in Bruges and felt more seen by the woman who washed her hair than by her husband of 20 years. She said the woman's hands were gentle, that she didn't rush, that she asked before touching, that for once she felt like her body wasn't just tolerated, but cherished. She said she wept afterward, not out of guilt, but relief. You held your breath while she spoke because the story made something in you ache. That kind of tenderness has no place in your world, not in the marriage bed, not in the sermons, not in the gossip that clings to every woman's name like wet linen. And yet it exists. Maybe only in corners. Maybe only for the brave. But it's real. There are always women who reach for each other in secret, who trade stories not just of pain, but of defiance, who offer comfort with their hands and eyes and words, who find in one another what the world never taught them they deserved. Some of them are midwives who learn not just how to birth children, but how to tend wounds the world refuses to see. Some are widows who speak freely because they've lost everything and have nothing left to fear. Some are young reckless, daring to want more before the world breaks them. And some are tired like you, but still somehow dreaming. You look down at your own hands, calloused, red from the wash basin, strong from lifting children and pulling bread from ovens. But when was the last time they touched someone out of love and not labor? You don't remember. You think about the time before marriage, when you used to run barefoot down the lane, when you laughed so hard it made your stomach hurt, when you and your friend Matilda lay in the grass and looked at clouds and didn't speak for an hour. You didn't know what intimacy meant then, but you felt it. Now you crave it like water. Not just sex, something deeper. A kind of knowing. Being held without being claimed. Being seen without being judged. Being touched without being taken. You've never had that. But others have. In quiet places behind cloister walls and letters slipped under doors, in rooms where candles burn low and no one is watching. The world doesn't write about those women. The scribes and historians record kings and popes, battles and treaties, but they don't tell you about the two nuns who found solace in each other's arms, or the washerwoman who held her friend as she wept after yet another night of forced duty, or the merchant's daughter who dared to run away with a serving girl. But those stories happened. They just happened quietly, because survival demanded silence, and silence hid everything, sin and love alike. You think about leaving, just once, packing a bundle, taking your children, walking until the road runs out. But you wouldn't make it far. You know that. The roads are dangerous. The forests worse. A woman alone is not safe. And a woman with children is easy prey. So you stay. But inside, a part of you keeps walking, keeps imagining, keeps believing that somewhere in some version of the world, women are allowed to choose, allowed to want, allowed to be more than wives and mothers and martyrs. You tuck the mended tunic into the basket and blow out the candle. The fire has died down to red embers. You lie beside your children, pull the wool blanket up to your chin, and listen to the wind. It sounds like something ancient, a song you once knew. And as you drift toward sleep, that same thought lingers at the edge of your mind. There must be more than this. Let's keep going. We haven't reached the heart of it yet. There's still so much to feel, to remember, to uncover. You awaken before first light again. The rooster hasn't crowed, but your body doesn't care, it knows the rhythm too well. You slip quietly from the shared bed, careful not to wake the children or him. The floor is cold. Your knees crack as you kneel by the hearth to coax the embers back to life. Same motions, same ache in your wrists, same silence. But something feels different this morning. Not in the world, but in you. A slow, quiet shift. Not yet a fire. Just heat beneath the ashes. Last night, he didn't come to you. Not out of kindness, but out of drink. He passed out before you had to brace yourself. You lay there in the dark, listening to the steady rasp of his breath, and for once you were alone in your own skin. You thought about running. Again. Not because you truly believed you could, but because imagining it is the only way to survive staying. You traced the routes in your head past the mill, down by the brook, through the thicket. You imagined a cottage, a quiet place somewhere no one knew your name. A place where your body would be no one's burden. Of course, that place doesn't exist. Not for women like you. But dreaming is all you have. And it's not just your dream. Every woman around you, whether she says it aloud or not, carries some version of that same map in her mind. A way out. A second self. A silent what if you'd said no at the altar? What if you'd never gone into that room? What if you hadn't been born a girl? These are not thoughts you're supposed to have. The priest would call them dangerous. Your mother would call them shameful. Your husband would call them madness. But you don't care. Not anymore. Because this life, this pattern, sleep, feed, breed, clean, endure, it's not enough. It never has been. You think about the times you've tried to explain what it feels like. To other women. To yourself. You once told your sister that you hated being touched. That sometimes you clenched your jaw so tightly during the act, your teeth ached the next day. She looked away, said, "That's just how it is." That answer didn't comfort you. It terrified you. Because what if just how it is never changes? You pass the village green on your way to fetch water. A boy barely 15 throws a rock at a pig and laughs. His friend elbows him and gestures toward a passing girl just a few years older. They whisper. She keeps walking. Her back stiffens. You see it in her shoulders. She's heard it all before. "Nice hips," one of the boys says. Laughter follows. No one corrects him. Not even the men leaning against the fence. Because they said things like that once too. Boys are taught early that a woman's body is public. A thing to be appraised, discussed, taken. Girls are taught to lower their eyes and keep walking. And if she speaks up, she's difficult. If she fights back, she's dangerous. If she ignores it, they call her frigid, prideful. There's no winning. Back home, your youngest is awake, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He wants breakfast. He wants you to carry him, even though your arms already ache. You lift him anyway. Because despite everything, despite what you've endured, what your body has weathered, this little boy is yours. Born from pain, yes, but also from something unexplainable, something tender. And you wonder how can love and suffering live in the same breath. You've asked God that question more than once, in whispered prayers, in silent shaking pleas at the altar. No answer has ever come. Only the rustle of wind through stained glass. Only the flicker of candles. Only silence. Maybe silence is the only answer there is. Still you believe. Because you have to. Belief is one of the last things they can't take from you. Belief that somewhere, somehow, things might change. That your daughters might live differently. That someday women will speak without fear and be heard without consequence. It's a distant hope, a dangerous one, but you feed it quietly. You watch your neighbor's daughter, Sarah, running barefoot in the grass, shouting like a storm, her hair wild. She's 7 now. Her eyes haven't learned to look down yet. She still believes she's allowed to take up space. You don't stop her. You don't tell her to be careful, to be quiet, to be small. Not yet. Let her have this summer. Let her keep this freedom, this fire for as long as she can. Because soon enough the world will notice she's no longer a child. And it will try to put her in her place. And that place, more often than not, is beneath someone. Under their name. Under their rule. Under their body. But maybe if enough women remember how it felt to run barefoot, things can shift. Maybe memory can be a kind of resistance. Maybe tenderness can be an inheritance. You sit at the threshold of your home, the baby asleep in your lap, your body worn but not broken. You watch the horizon. Somewhere beyond it, others are stirring too, wives, widows, workers, nuns. Women whose names won't appear in any chronicle. Women whose stories are etched into nothing but muscle and memory. But they are real. And they are many. And you, though silenced, though bent beneath the weight, are part of them. You hold that truth in your chest like a coal, not a fire. Not yet. But it could be. Let's keep going. We've reached the center of the maze, but the walls still twist ahead. The worst is not over, and neither is the hope. It's late again. The fire is low, your hands smell of onion and lard, and you're too tired to lift your feet as you move across the floor. The children are finally asleep, and your husband, if he's home at all, has gone quiet in the next room. You sit in the dark, a bowl of porridge untouched in your lap. You're not hungry, not for food. There's something else gnawing at you. Something deeper than the ache in your joints or the soreness between your thighs. It's the awareness that your whole life has passed under someone else's hand. That from the day your body began to change, it stopped belonging to you. And tonight, as the wind howls outside and the old shutters rattle against the cottage wall, you remember the first time you truly felt that loss. You were young, 12 maybe, just old enough to bleed. You didn't understand what it meant yet. You only knew that suddenly the world looked at you differently, that the jokes the men made became darker, that your uncle stopped hugging you, that the women in your life, your mother, your aunts, became quieter when you entered the room. You learned that your body was a currency, and you hadn't asked for that. From then on, everything changed. The way your father spoke to you, the way your mother inspected your posture, the way your future was no longer yours, but a matter of negotiations and gossip. By the time you were betrothed, you had already surrendered your name in small ways. You stopped running. You folded your hands when you sat. You spoke less. You practiced kneeling. You learned to smile without feeling. The wedding night was not the beginning. It was only the final stamp on a contract that had been written in secret over years. Now, with years behind you and children clinging to your skirts, you wonder how you lived through it all. Not because it was so violent, though at times it was, but because it was so quiet, so constant, like a rope slowly pulled tighter. There were no explosions, just years of endurance. You once asked an older woman, Martha, how she did it, how she lived in a marriage where her husband treated her like soil to be plowed. Her answer has stayed with you. You stop expecting it to be anything else, and that you realized was the key to surviving. To endure this world, you had to forget what your body might have been, what touch might have meant, what tenderness could feel like. You had to stop dreaming, but you never really did. Even now, when your husband reaches for you in the dark with ale on his breath and clumsy hands, something in you retreats. Not just out of fear, but out of grief. Grief for the girl who once thought that being loved meant being seen. You know better now. In the town, there's a story going around. A nobleman's daughter was caught with her maid. They say she was dragged from her rooms and sent to a convent in the north. The maid, no one knows. Probably beaten. Possibly worse. The town gossips whisper unnatural. The priest preaches corruption of the soul, but you only think of that moment they must have shared. That fragile, stolen second when they reached for each other. When something kind and brave passed between them. And you wonder, did it feel safe even for a moment? You think of your own fleeting touch, accidental years ago. In the stables with a neighbor's daughter. You were both fetching kindling. You bumped into her. She smiled. Her fingers grazed yours. It meant nothing. Or maybe it meant everything. You've never spoken of it, but the warmth of that touch never left your skin. In this world, desire is a language with no words. You learn to speak it in silences, in glances, in small rebellions. Some women find ways to survive the silence. They form little alliances, unspoken networks. A squeeze of the arm here, a shared loaf there, a look that says, I see you. I know what he does. I know what you carry. These alliances don't change the laws. They don't stop the sermons. But they build something beneath the surface, a sisterhood, ancient and invisible, rooted in shared understanding. You've come to depend on these women. When the village men joke too loudly at the well, it's another woman who stands beside you. When the midwife says, "Take this only at the new moon," it's another woman who nods and doesn't ask why. When your neighbor slips you a salve for bruises, she doesn't mention she's telling you. I believe you even if no one else will. You've learned that women carry one another when the world refuses to. And they've always done it. In convents, in kitchens, in childbirth beds, and graveyards. Across centuries of obedience and shame and silence. This is the secret history no one writes down. It's not in the records kept by monks, not in the scrolls sealed by kings. It's in the hands of women kneading dough with fingers that once curled into fists. It's in the lullabies sung through tears. It's in the careful way one woman helps another up from the ground. You belong to that history, even if you've never dared to write a word. And perhaps someday someone will. Someone will tell the truth. Not just the dates and wars and names of rulers, but the ache between a mother's ribs, the hush of a woman denied her own voice, the raw, unspoken truth of sex that was never love, never choice, but always endured. You stare into the fire, the bowl of porridge still full. You don't cry. You haven't cried in years. But there's a tightness in your throat that feels close to it. You don't know if your life will change. You don't know if your daughters will be free. But you know one thing you remember. And remembering, truly remembering, can be the beginning of something new. Stay with me. We're still not done. There's more to see. More hearts beating in the dark. Let's walk a little farther. There's a market in the next village over, and you've been given permission to go, just you and your eldest daughter. It's a rare gift. A few hours away from the house, from the weight of the hearth, from the silent pressure of the bedroom. You tie your cloak, tuck a coin into your bodice, and begin the walk basket in hand, feet squelching in the muddy road. The air is crisp, the sky a dull gray. You breathe deeply. Even this bit of walking, this bit of chill is a kind of freedom. Your daughter skips ahead, humming. Her hair comes loose from its braid, and you leave it. Let her be wild for a little while longer. You reach the market where voices rise like birdsong, chaotic and full of life. Women barter for onions. Men shout about fish. Children weave between legs. You blend into the crowd, invisible and at peace. You stop to look at bolts of fabric, not because you'll buy them, but because the colors make your eyes feel full again. And then you see her, a woman about your age standing behind a table of carved spoons. Her face is strong, her hands sun-darkened, her hair wrapped in a faded red cloth. There's something in her eyes when they meet yours, a stillness, a knowing. You hold her gaze half a second too long, not in any sinful way, just recognition. She smiles, small, soft. You nod. No words pass between you, but you feel unmistakably that she knows. Not just about the way your body aches, but about the silence, the weight, the way you disappear into yourself when you lie down next to your husband at night. You look down at the spoons. You pick one up. You don't need it, but you buy it anyway. And when she takes your coin, she touches your hand gently, just briefly. The warmth travels up your arm. It stays with you the whole walk home. That night your husband is restless. He wants you. You try not to flinch as he reaches for you. You go still as you've been taught. He grunts. You feel the familiar stretch of pain, the press of your breath against your ribs, the dull thud of your heart counting every ceiling beam. But this time your mind doesn't float above you. This time you go somewhere else. You go back to the market, to the carved spoons, to the woman with the red cloth, to her eyes, her hands, her quiet, fierce gaze. And somehow you find yourself breathing again. Not in defiance, just in memory. Because even the memory of gentleness can be a form of rebellion. When it's over, he rolls away. He's asleep in seconds. You lie on your back, staring at the ceiling. But this time your chest is not just hollow. It's also awake. Like something inside you stirred for the first time in years. It's not desire. It's not longing. It's awareness. Of your body. Of your breath. Of your capacity to feel something other than pain. You wonder when was the last time you felt that maybe never. The church would tell you that feeling anything other than submission is sin. That imagining another person's touch, even just their kindness, is a crack in your vows. But you've come to believe something else. That your body is not the sin. That your silence is not your salvation. That your suffering does not make you holy. You're beginning to unlearn. Not out loud. Not in the daylight. But in the quiet chambers of your mind where the world can't hear you. And that's where it begins. For so many women. With the smallest shift. You've seen it in others, too. In Mary the Weaver's daughter, who was sent away for speaking up about the Lord's Son. In Alice, the tavern maid who refused a patron and was slapped across the cheek and didn't cry. In the old widow who no longer cares what the village says and walks barefoot to the river every morning just because she can. These women don't lead revolutions. They don't carry swords. They aren't remembered in poems, but they resist. Every time they choose silence on their own terms, every time they reach for another woman's hand, every time they say no, even if no one listens, they resist. And resistance in your world is rarely loud. It looks like this: you wake your daughter before dawn, tie her hair pack a crust of bread in her satchel, and send her to the baker's to begin her apprenticeship. She's 10, already being watched by the village boys, already growing in ways that make you nervous. You tell her things in the form of chores. You say, "Don't let anyone walk behind you too long." You say, "Keep a pin in your sleeve just in case." You say, "Trust your gut if something feels wrong." You don't say, "The world will try to take your body from you." You don't say, "Your value isn't in your womb." You don't say, "You are not here just to be someone's wife." But maybe she'll hear it anyway in the space between your words. Maybe she'll notice the way you pause before answering her questions. The way you stare at the fire too long sometimes. The way you trace the lines of your hand as if they were paths leading somewhere you've never dared go. Maybe one day she'll ask you, "Mama, were you ever happy?" And maybe if the fire is low, if the house is quiet, if the ache isn't too sharp that night, you'll tell her the truth, that you are learning to be. Slowly, secretly. That happiness isn't a thing the world gave you, but something you've begun to carve out for yourself like a spoon from wood. Rough at first, uneven, but real. and maybe that will be enough to keep her walking a little taller, laughing a little louder, trusting her body as something sacred, not something to be taken. You sit by the fire again, fingers tracing the grooves of that spoon from the market. You run your thumb along the handle. It's smooth, worn by hands, carved with care, ordinary and quietly miraculous. And you remember that woman's eyes, that small smile, that gentle touch. She may never know what she gave you, but you know. And it's enough to light something in the dark. There's more still ahead. We're not finished. The journey through silence continues, but so does the strength. Let's walk on. You've begun to notice things you never let yourself notice before. The way your hands tremble when you scrub the same wooden floorboards every morning. The way your voice cracks when you call the children to table. The way your body stiffens when you hear his boots at the door. None of this is new, but now you feel it. You used to move through your days like a ghost in your own skin. Now you're beginning to return to it. Not all at once, just in fragments. Small pieces of self like stones being gently dug out of a frozen field. He doesn't see the change. Not yet. He thinks you're the same. He still grunts when he wants you. Still slaps your hip like you're part of the furniture. Still complains when the stew is too thin or the fire too low. But something inside you is growing roots. Last night you told him no. Just once. Just a whisper. He didn't listen. He rarely does. But you said it. You heard yourself say it. And that matters more than anything else. You didn't cry afterward. You just lay there, eyes open, repeating the words silently to yourself like a prayer. No, 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 it's the only word that's ever felt like yours. At church, the priest gives a sermon on obedience. He speaks of wives and their roles, of the sacred duty of motherhood, of the holiness of suffering. You stare at the candle near the altar and think, is God listening? Because if suffering makes you holy, then you must be a saint by now. But you don't feel holy. You feel tired. You feel full of things that can't be spoken in this space. The pew beneath you is hard. Your knees ache. Your hands are folded the way they taught you, but inside your mind you are screaming. You look around the chapel. Every woman there wears the same mask, eyes lowered, backs straight, nothing soft, nothing honest. And you think we are all pretending to be obedient. Because if we stopped even for a moment, if we said what we really felt, what we really remembered, this whole place would catch fire. After Mass, you linger, light a candle, not for a soul, not even for God, just for you. You don't say a prayer. You just stare at the flame. It flickers. It survives. A few days later, the midwife visits. She's older than you by decades, but her back is still straight and her voice sharp as an axe. She checks your neighbor's newborn, mutters something about its color, then turns to you. You're late, she says. You hadn't noticed. She frowns, presses your belly, asks questions. You shake your head. No, no more. But you don't say it aloud. She gives you a pouch. Herbs. You know what they're for. You thank her, press a few coins into her hand. She doesn't speak, doesn't smile, just touches your arm and walks away. She knows. Later, you pour the herbs into a cup of boiled water. Bitter. You hold it in your lap, watching the steam rise. Your husband is at the tavern. Your children are asleep. The room is still. And in that moment, you feel the full weight of your decision. You drink it slowly, not out of shame, not out of fear, but because this bitter tea, this quiet choice is the closest you've ever come to reclaiming yourself. The bleeding starts that night. It's not easy. You expected pain. You didn't expect the trembling or the way your breath gets caught in your throat or how your body shakes with the force of it. You curl on the floor by the fire, clutching a rag to your thighs. You don't cry, but you do remember. You remember the first time he touched you, the first time you bled, the first time your belly swelled without your permission, the first time you whispered to the sky, "Let me die," or "Let me disappear." But now you don't want to die. You want to live, not just breathe, not just bear children, not just serve and kneel and survive, but live. And that's why the pain doesn't destroy you. It cleanses you. And in the morning when the sun creeps through the window, you rise. You bury the bloodied rags behind the cottage. You wash your legs in the basin. You don't speak to anyone. You don't need to. You've done something no one saw, something no one can take from you. You made a choice, and choice in your world is the most radical act there is. The days pass. He returns to your bed, but you are different now. He doesn't notice, but you do. You close your eyes and go somewhere else. You remember the woman at the market, her steady hands, her warm touch, her knowing eyes. And you remember the word no. You carry it like a stone in your pocket. You do your chores. You tend the fire. You kiss your children. But inside you are learning a new language. One not written in Latin or dictated from the pulpit. A language made of glances and silences of boundaries and breath of memories that are more than shame. You are becoming something the world didn't expect you to be: awake, alive, and no longer afraid of yourself. There are rumors now. A girl in the next village was caught kissing another girl in the fields. Someone said they saw it. The priest called it blasphemy. The men laughed. The women went quiet. You said nothing, but your heart beat louder than it had in years. You didn't laugh. You didn't frown. You just held the image in your mind, two girls barefoot in the grass, kissing like no one had told them not to. And you thought, let them run. Let them run and never look back. You go to bed that night and lie still beside your husband. He snores. You watch the stars through the small window. You think of freedom not as something out there, but something in here under your ribs, behind your eyes, rising slowly. And for the first time in a long while, you sleep. Deep, unafraid. Because you are no longer alone inside yourself. You are learning the truth that no one taught you. Your body is not a curse. Your voice is not a sin. Your silence is not your destiny. And somewhere across fields and chapels and centuries, there are others just like you, waiting, aching, remembering. Let's walk further, just a little more. The dawn is near, but the truth is still unfolding. The seasons turn. You mark them not by feast days or harvests, but by the changes in your children's faces, by the new lines around your own eyes, by the things you no longer flinch at. You are still here, not happy, not free, but more awake than you've ever been. He still reaches for you in the night. But you've learned to leave your body in those moments like a well-worn path. Sometimes you imagine your soul perched in the rafters watching it all from above. The sky doesn't open. No justice thunders down. But when it's over, you return to yourself and you keep going. But the part of you that once stayed silent, completely, blindly, shamefully silent, is starting to speak again. Not out loud. Not yet. But in small, strange ways. You catch yourself humming as you wash linens. Not the dirges your mother used to sing, but something different. Lighter. Something you made up. You hum it again. It doesn't have words, but it feels like a song meant just for you. When you sew by candlelight, your fingers sometimes trace patterns on the cloth that mean nothing. Or maybe they do. Maybe they're symbols for the things you've lost, or the things you're reclaiming. You don't know, but your hands know what they're doing, and that's enough. You think of your daughters. They're growing fast, too fast. One has just begun to bleed. You saw the cloth hidden beneath her bed. She hasn't told you yet, but you see the way she looks at you, waiting for you to tell her something. Anything. You sit beside her one morning, both of you snapping beans. The sun filters through the window, catching in her hair. She doesn't look at you when she speaks. "Mama," she says, "is it always like this? Is this what being a woman means?" And you pause. The words catch in your throat. Not because you don't know the answer, but because you do. You want to lie. You want to tell her it gets easier, that men change, that love will come. But lies are heavy, and you're done carrying them. You look her in the eyes, and you say softly, "No. It doesn't have to be. That's all." She nods, keeps snapping beans. But something softens in her shoulders. She heard you, and maybe, just maybe, she'll remember that softness later, when her own silence begins to weigh too much. One night, long after everyone else is asleep, you walk to the edge of the woods. You don't go far, just to the clearing. The moon is high and the air smells of pine and damp earth. You sit on a rock and listen. Not for voices, not for God. Just for yourself. You close your eyes and take a breath, not a frightened breath, not a hurried breath, but a full one. Deep and slow. You let it fill your lungs. You let it stretch your ribs. You are not thinking of sin. You are not thinking of salvation. You are thinking of your skin, your scars, the body that has held your pain, your children, your fear, and your endurance. You place a hand on your chest. You feel your own heartbeat. It's steady, strong. No one owns it. And in that moment, you realize something you've never allowed yourself to say. You were never wrong for wanting more. Not wrong for wanting to choose who touched you. Not wrong for wishing sex had been something shared, not demanded. Not wrong for dreaming of women's hands, of tenderness, of soft breath against your neck. Not wrong for weeping afterward, for going still, for leaving your body to survive it. Not wrong for surviving. The world taught you to feel shame, but the shame was never yours. In the village, nothing has changed. The priest still preaches obedience. The men still brag. The women still laugh too loudly when they're afraid. The rules still stand like cold stone walls. But you have changed. You don't kneel in quite the same way. You don't lower your eyes. And when he touches you now, you are not a girl. You are a woman with memory, with fire in your marrow. He doesn't see the difference. He never will. But you feel it every time you walk past your reflection in a basin and see your own eyes looking back without apology. You still bleed, still serve, still endure, but not silently. You have begun to whisper, to teach, to pass stories between women like threads connecting, winding, binding. You speak to the midwife in code. You teach your daughter how to stand firm. You write words into the dirt behind the cottage just to watch them appear. Not words of rebellion, words of truth, of memory, of hope. And slowly, you begin to realize there are others like you. Women who have started to listen to themselves again, who are waking piece by piece. They don't wear armor. They don't raise banners. But they know. And knowing is the first kindling of freedom. You make bread one morning, hands in dough, the fire warm on your face. Your youngest hums nearby, tracing letters into spilled flour. You glance at the sunlight on the table, the steam rising from the pot, the quiet rhythm of ordinary things. And you feel it. A flicker of something, not joy. Not quite. But peace, too. The kind that comes when you stop pretending, when you stop hiding your pain and start honoring it, when you stop fearing your body and start coming home to it. The world outside has not changed, but inside the walls are falling, and through the cracks, light pours in. There's more to say. The story isn't over, but you're closer now to the truth, to yourself, to the quiet revolution that lives in your breath. Let's keep walking. We're almost there. You wake before the sun again, but this morning something is different. It's not the work, not the routine. That remains. The fire still needs feeding. The children still call your name before you've spoken your first word. But this time, when you step outside to shake the dust from the rugs, the air feels wider. There's a kind of quiet that isn't just silence. It's space. You've earned it. You don't say that aloud. You barely admit it to yourself. But inside, beneath the old ache in your bones and the weight of the years you carried without complaint, there's a steadiness. Not hope, not exactly. Something more grounded. Like a tree thick with roots still standing after every storm. You are not free, but you are no longer lost. You've begun to live with memory as your companion. Not the screaming kind. Not the kind that throws open your ribs and demands to be seen, but the kind that walks quietly beside you. The kind that says you made it through. It's strange, isn't it? How survival was never supposed to be sacred, but now it feels like the most profound thing you've done. Because it wasn't just the birthing or the bleeding. It was the staying, the enduring, the tiny moments you let your soul breathe, even when no one noticed. Especially then. There were days you thought about running, nights you imagined slipping away through the trees barefoot and breathless. A part of you still dreams of it. And that's okay. Dreams were never crimes, even when the world made them feel like sin. You see the world differently now. When the priest preaches about Eve, you no longer bow your head. You think if Eve disobeyed, she did it with purpose. She wanted knowledge. She wanted more. You think maybe I've been Eve this whole time. And when the village men joke at the well, you don't smile anymore. You don't rush past, but you don't linger. You hold their gaze if they dare meet yours. Some look away. You don't hate them. You pity them, because they will never know what it means to reclaim something taken, to stitch yourself back together with thread made of memory salt and will. You've learned to see other women differently, too. The girl who walks with her arms crossed tight across her chest, she's surviving. The old woman who talks to herself while digging in the garden, she's remembering. The servant who disappears some nights and returns with leaves in her hair and a new light behind her eyes, she's loving, somehow, still. You don't ask questions. You just make space for them, like space was made for you and your daughters, God, your daughters. You watch them like a hawk, not to catch them, but to guard them. You teach them things your mother didn't teach you. Not just how to scrub linen or salt meat, but how to listen to the voice inside that says no, or not yet, or this is mine. You tell them their bodies are not shameful. That desire is not evil. That silence is not a virtue unless they choose it. You tell them about herbs, about how to move through a crowd without being touched, about how to ask for what they need, even if no one listens. Sometimes you think you're too late, but they are listening. They always were. You sit with the other women now at the edge of the field by the fire behind the church. You speak without shame, not loudly, not yet, but with clarity, with eyes that do not dart or apologize. You say things like, "He doesn't touch me the way I want," or "I used to think pleasure was sin," or "I stopped bleeding last month and I'm not afraid." And when they hear you, some shift, some nod, some cry not because they're sad, but because no one ever said it aloud before. Words are power. Spoken slowly, whispered, even they crack open centuries. You've seen it happen. The midwife tells you more now. She trusts you, passes you her pouch of knowledge like a sacred scroll. You protect it, pass it only when needed, because this knowledge is more than medicine. It's memory, it's lineage, it's the map out of silence. There's a new girl in the village, 14 maybe. A cousin from far away come to stay with relatives. She walks stiffly, eyes down, body already folding in on itself. You see it immediately, the way she flinches when men pass, the way she pretends not to exist. You don't ask. You don't press. You sit beside her one day. Offer her water, say nothing. Later she finds you in the stable hands, trembling. She doesn't tell you what happened. She doesn't have to. You place a cloth in her hand and say, "You are not ruined." Her breath catches. You say it again, "You are not ruined." She weeps. You hold her. No one sees. But it matters. Because there are moments that rewrite the world, not with fire or force, but with kindness, with presence, with the refusal to let another woman believe she is alone. You become part of her story. She becomes part of yours. And that more than anything else is what heals you. Years from now, they won't remember your name. They won't know the precise weight of the shame you carried. They won't know how many nights you lay awake listening to your own heartbeat. They won't know how many times you said no without being heard. But they will live differently because of you. because of the stories you told and the ones you refused to accept, because of the women you comforted and the ones you listened to, because of the daughters you taught to keep their eyes up. That will be your legacy. Not the name carved on a stone, but the lives carved by your quiet resistance. You gather your shawl, step out into the wind, look at the sky and smile, not because life is easy, but because it's yours. And that in the end is enough. You're safe now. You've reached the end of a long, dark corridor, and the door is open. There's no one behind you, no one demanding anything. The world has gone still. Just you, your breath, and the quiet rhythm of memory settling down. Let your body relax. Let the images fade, the stone walls, the chamber doors, the whispered prayers, the aching silence. You've carried them long enough. Now you can set them down. Feel the bed beneath you. Feel your weight sink into it. There is no more to do, no more to endure. You've done enough. Your story matters, even if it was never written in a book, even if no one ever asked to hear it, even if the world called it ordinary. You lived, you felt, you remembered, and now you rest. Let the steady hum of your breath guide you. Let sleep gather like mist around your ankles and pull you softly down. You're not alone. Somewhere across centuries and oceans, others are resting too. Women who bore the same weight. Women who walked the same path. You are with them now, and tomorrow when you wake, the world will be waiting. But for now, let it be quiet. Let it be warm. Let it be yours.